And this morning I'm speaking with Kevin Paap, the president of the Minnesota Farm Bureau Federation. Kevin, you're back from the annual meeting of the American Farm Bureau down in Orlando. First of all, congratulations to Mike Muron of Washington County Farm Bureau for winning the Young Farmers and Ranchers Excellence in Agriculture Award.
You know, you can never be disappointed in our young farmers, whether it was at the discussion meet, the Achievement Award, the Excellence in Agriculture. All of our young farmers represented us very well, and certainly we're very proud as Minnesotans have back-to-back national champions. So congratulations to Mike and all the great things he does for agriculture.
And also, Kevin, I know one big story coming out of the American Farm Bureau meeting down in Orlando last week was where Farm Bureau's got a new president. We aren't going to say President Bob Stallman anymore. Who is the new president for American Farm Bureau?
We've got a new president. It's the 12th president of the last 97 years. Zippy Duval is a good friend. He's a Georgia poultry, cattle, and hay producer. He's really a product of Farm Bureau, starting in his local Farm Bureau, rising up through leadership, being involved with that young farmer and rancher program we just talked about, served on the committee and has moved up, served as Georgia president, and now excited to work with as our new national president.
And of course, also, I believe the South Dakota Farm Bureau president was named the vice president at the national meeting, correct?
The Midwest will be represented very well at the table with this administration. Scott Vanderwall, who is a farmer from Volga, South Dakota, a good friend, someone we've worked with a long time on issues here in the Midwest. So very excited and honored to have Scott Vanderwall, a Midwestern president, as our national vice president.
And of course, Kevin, the annual meeting wouldn't be the annual meeting without issues being discussed. What were some of the issues discussed at the annual meeting during the delegate sessions?
Well, whether it was delegate session or just in the hall, anytime you get 6,000 farmers and ranchers together, you have to talk about the depressed farm prices, the need to do regulatory reform, the need to make sure that we have access to our biotechnology to be more productive, more efficient with our resources. But really, farm prices were probably one of the big things. And the way to increase prices is to increase demand. We're going to continue to work on trade, international trade, that 96% of the world that isn't the United States, and push for congressional approval of the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Oh, and you mentioned the Trans-Pacific Partnership, Kevin, and I believe Mrs. Vetter from the trade representative was mentioning that if it doesn't get passed, it's going to make some major issues for producers in terms of potential lost income. How important is it for Farm Bureau and America's farmers and ranchers to get trade promotion and the trade partnerships passed?
It is critical, and what we have to remember is that we can't compare what prices are like now with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, because remember, if the United States chooses not to do that, that doesn't mean that the other 11 countries won't do that. So other countries that are ready to do this, ready to sign now, it's not a choice of what it is with or without. It is what it is if we're not in it and everyone else has access to those lower tariffs, access to those markets. So we definitely would be at a disadvantage to those other countries if we chose not to participate.
And also talking on a different trade issue, let's talk about the recent trade restrictions or ramifications from the cool rule that the World Trade Organization let Mexico and Canada level $1 billion in sanctions each year. How did Farm Bureau respond to that, and what were some of the thoughts maybe down at the meeting in terms of the country of origin labeling?
Well, really our bottom line in Farm Bureau and in agriculture is food security and food safety. We want to make sure that we have an understanding that the things are labeled properly, that things are tested properly, inspected properly. We certainly support a uniform labeling system, whether it be with GMOs, whether it be with country of origin, as long as it's a voluntary system. But we want to make sure that it's WTO compliant. It goes right back to that trade discussion. We have to follow the rules, and quite frankly, with the cool legislation, it was strike four times in a row. The World Trade Organization said this is not right. This puts others at a disadvantage, and that's why we supported congressional action to remove that. We still can label. We just have to do it voluntarily.
What were some of the other issues that the American Farm Bureau Federation members brought up during either the open session or during delegate sessions?
Still a lot of talk about regulatory reform. You know, we need a system that's fair, that respects our freedoms, that considers the economic impact. We're going to continue to oppose federal expansion under the Clean Water Act. We feel that we really need reform of the Endangered Species Act. Members just want to do things to improve that regulatory process. Continue to talk about technology to make sure that we've got our access to biotechnology and those other technology things like unmanned aircraft. Making sure energy is so important, the availability, the affordability of energy. We want to continue to encourage growth of renewable energy, things that can add value not only to the farms but to the entire rural communities.
And of course, Kevin, this is all part of the annual agenda I know that Farm Bureau tries to work on in terms of talking with lawmakers throughout the year. What are some of the issues, maybe more Minnesota-specific, that Minnesota Farm Bureau is planning on considering pushing toward lawmakers in the upcoming year?
Well, certainly the protection of our natural resources are very important to every generation in agriculture, so they're there for the next generation. Farm Bureaus continue to be at the table as we talk about water, and whether it's water quality, water quantity, and as we move through that, we still have some concerns with what the buffer law is and what it is not. We're going to be engaged in those conversations. But just, again, making that connection with consumers and with lawmakers about who agriculture is. A lot of discussion on taxes, particularly property taxes and how they affect school funding, new schools, and things like that. We've got a property task force that is continually meeting to look at what are some solutions we can do as we look at funding of our education system in Minnesota.
And we've been speaking with Kevin Paap, president of the Minnesota Farm Bureau Federation. He's been down at the American Farm Bureau Federation's annual meeting in Orlando, Florida.